I would like you to think of something that is nearly irresistibly tempting to you. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to send me an email and tell me what it is or write in the chat box. If you're watching this on live chat, I'm not going to ask for that. So you don't have to share it. But think of something coming to mind that is nearly irresistibly tempting to you. So tempting. I mean, it's just extremely difficult to say no to that temptation. I'll give you just a moment to think about that, get that in your mind. So that thing, that temptation, what makes it so tempting? What is it about it that is so tempting? Again, you don't have to share. Just get that in your mind if you would, because I think it'll help you tremendously as we work on this together today. What makes that thing, that temptation, so tempting that it's nearly impossible to resist? Got an answer? I think I could have asked it this way. What desire is being poked and stoked, right? Because that's what it is often, right? It's a desire. So what desire, maybe combination of desires, maybe that's why it's so powerful. It's because it's a combination of desires. But what desire or combination of desires is being kind of poked and then stoked, fanned into a flame when you see that thing, or you have that opportunity, or you get to, in that situation, what desires being poked, what desires are being stoked. I hope that makes sense. This I know. Many of you have no desire to be on stage at Panama Baptist Church, right? You have no desire to be up there. Becoming a public speaker or a pastor is not tempting. I recently asked someone in our church to do something for me, and they did it, and I thanked them for it, and I'm like, thank you so much for that and for all that you do. And they wrote back to me, I'll do anything to keep off of that stage, keep out of being called up front. Wow. Yeah, that is not tempting. That's why you pay Pastor Joel and me to do it, right? You're not tempted to be a public speaker. You're not tempted to be a pastor. I've heard a few of you say there's no air up there on that platform. But this I know about you. You have a lot of experience with temptation. I bet everyone who's watching this, I bet everyone who will show up at the in-person service could generate the content for a speech. They may not want to give the speech, but you guys could generate the content for a speech about the times when temptation is truly tempting. You could generate the content for a speech about, those times when you're not just a little tempted, but instead you're going at breakneck speed on the highway to the danger zone. If by danger zone we mean that place where indulgence to temptation is like practically guaranteed. Like, you could give me the details if you wanted to, of like, this is what it's like, this is the temptations or whatever, or when I'm in this situation, like when I'm exceedingly tired, or I'm angry, or I've been through this, or had that happen, or this happens. Like, it's almost guaranteed that I'm going to give in. Yeah, I'm on the highway to the danger zone. You could talk to me about that, or you could talk to someone else about that. You could generate the content for a TED Talk about that if you wanted, because you've had experience with temptation. You've had experience being on the highway to the danger zone. You've got experience of being in that place where it just seems like a foregone conclusion that you're going to give in to that temptation, whatever it is. I know for me, certain temptations come, and it seems like in no time at all, I'm in the danger zone. And then when I'm in the danger zone, I just give in. And then the consequences come, right? My conscience kicks in, guilt, sometimes shame. I got to tell you, that doesn't feel very good. And then after that, I start thinking about it a little more, and I feel like I've let God down, and I hate doing that. God has done so much for me, and He's shown His love for me in so many big ways and small ways over the years. I hate that feeling like that I've let God down. And then, of course, there's the fact that when I give in to temptation, especially if it's the same temptation over and over again, I have nurtured a habit. and I have reinforced a neural pathway that will make indulgence even more likely. Like neuroscience says to us that when we give into the same temptations over and over, we're creating a neural rut. We're actually creating a new default system in our brain. And I hate that. I hate that I'm building this habit and I'm building these neural ruts that are going to be harder and harder and harder to get out of every time I have indulged in that temptation and given in. And of course, as a Jesus follower, I believe that I've given the enemy something to hold over my head. And I hate doing that because you know what? He always holds it over my head. He brings it back to me and reminds me of that and how bad it is and how bad of a person I am and how, yeah, you've heard those accusations as well, I bet. And sometimes I cause damage to other people. Sometimes I cause damage to God's reputation, and I hate doing that too. And I believe that those of you who are listening to me today and you're Jesus followers, you can relate to everything that I just said. But even if you're not a Jesus follower, you can relate to a bunch of what I just said, right? You can relate to the guilty conscience unless you've worked really, really hard to kind of sear that, right? But you can relate to that. You can relate to negative consequences. You get that. You could do a TED Talk probably on that, right? And reinforce neural ruts and bad habits and all of that. You can relate. This isn't just a Jesus follower thing, giving into temptation and the whole danger zone, right? That highway to that's not just a Jesus follower thing. So we're beginning a new series today, and we're going to look carefully at temptation. We're going to try to pull back the curtain and see what's back there. We're also in this series, we're going to look at ourselves, the tempted, to identify like what's going on beneath the surface. And we're going to talk about strategies for staying out of the danger zone. In the first part of this series, we're going to look at a letter that was written by a guy named James. James is the brother of Jesus, and this letter that he wrote is now part of our Bible. In addition to advising us how to live out our faith, his letter has several remarkable insights in it. For example, James wrote that a person with a conflicted heart will have conflicts with other people. James chapter 4, verse 1, he says, "What's the source of wars and fights among you? Don't they come from your passions that wage war within you?" James is spot on. He realized that if you've got a divided heart, right, you really want this and you really want that, but those two things are in conflict with each other. You got a divided, conflicted heart. That conflict inside you is going to spill out on the relationships you have outside. You are going to have conflicts with other people if you have a conflicted heart. Brilliant insight. Just a few paragraphs into James' letter is another remarkable insight, and this is the one we're going to look at today. This is James chapter 1, verse 13. He says, "Now, no one undergoing a trial should say, 'I'm being tempted by God,' since God's not tempted by evil, and he doesn't tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when he's drawn away and enticed by his own evil desire." He says, you're drawn away. Your other translations say you're dragged away and enticed by your own evil desire. Dragged away. What an accurate picture, isn't it? Because when you think about someone being dragged away, they're not in control. They're going somewhere else that they don't want to go because someone else or something else is in control, whether, they're being dragged off by this big wild animal that's, pulling them back to the cave to eat them, or it's a bad guy who's got a hold of them and they're dragging them into this dark alley to beat them or do worse or whatever, right? Dragged away is such an accurate picture when you think about all the nasty things that happen when temptation comes, right? And we're in the danger zone and all of that, right? We are dragged away. We are not under control. We are not in charge of our destiny, it would seem, at that point in time. But here's the thing that's so striking and that James is pointing out. We're not dragged away kicking and screaming, according to James, right? We're not dragged away kicking and screaming. No, we are dragged away salivating, right? We are dragged away drooling. How? Because he says we are enticed. We are lured in. As soon as I read that, I thought immediately of this passage. It's Proverbs chapter 7, where a guy is describing a young man who gets lured. Let's just read it together. He says, "At the window of my house, I looked through my lattice, and I saw among the inexperienced, I noticed among the youths, a young man lacking sense. Crossing the street near her corner, he strolled down the road to her house at twilight, in the evening, in the dark of the night. And a woman came out to meet him, dressed like a prostitute, having a hidden agenda. She is loud and defiant. Her feet do not stay at home. Now in the street, now in the square, she lurks at every corner. She grabs him and kisses him. She brazenly says to him, 'I've made fellowship offerings. Today I fulfilled my vows. So I came out to meet you, to search for you, and I found you. I've spread coverings on my bed, richly colored linen from Egypt. I've perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deeply of lovemaking until morning. Let's feast on each other's love. My husband isn't home. He went on a long journey. He took a bag of silver with him, and he will come home at the time of the full moon.' She seduces him with her persistent pleading. She lures him with her flattering talk. And he follows her impulsively, like an ox going to slaughter, like a deer bounding toward a trap until an arrow pierces its liver, like a bird darting into a snare. He doesn't know it will cost him his life." There's stuff in there that maybe we don't relate to. Like she talks about her fellowship offerings and fulfilled her vows. But basically she's saying to him, listen, I'm in the mood to celebrate. Like I'm in the mood to celebrate, and there is no one I would rather celebrate with than you. And so I came out looking for you. Come, I have everything arranged. And don't worry about getting caught. I've taken care of that. I just want you. I want you so badly. I want you. And he's enticed. Right? He's enticed. Why? Because he's got desires that have been poked and stoked here, right? He desires to feel wanted. He wants to feel pursued. He wants to feel like he's special. He desires that. He desires sexual pleasure. He desires the excitement of the forbidden. He probably has other desires. But here's the thing. She knows what those desires are. Right? She knows, and she uses her knowledge of his desires to lure him. And so he is being dragged away. The proverb says he's being dragged away, and it's going to cost him his life. But he's not being dragged away unwillingly. He's being dragged away salivating. Right? He's panting, he's drooling, because she is telling him what he wants to hear. Which leads to this insight. Temptation is truly tempting when it aligns with our desires. Right? Temptation is truly tempting to us when it aligns with our desires, either our God-given desires or the desires of the old heart. You know, sometimes it's a legit desire, right? For example, maybe we desire to be respected, or we desire to make a difference, or we desire just some rest. Those are God-given desires. But sometimes those desires can get out of control, and temptation is truly tempting when it lines up with a God-given desire or a desire of the old heart, an evil desire, and boom, that's when it's tempting. This is why most of you are not tempted to run up on stage and interrupt the sermon to be the preacher next week at church, because you have no desire to be on that stage. So that's not tempting. The truly tempting temptations are the ones that align with our desires. We could say it this way: our desires are the highway to the danger zone. Right? The way that we get to the danger zone is right down the highway of our desires. That's insight number one. That's the insight that James gives to us. He says everyone is dragged away and enticed by his own desires. Your desires are the highway to the danger zone. But there's another insight here that we grab from what we just read there in Proverbs. Temptation is truly tempting when we're blind to everything but the desire. Right? Temptation is truly tempting when we are blinded by the desire. We're blinded to everything else except for the desire. Like when the future, the consequences, all that is forgotten, hidden, whatever. We are blind to it. I thought about this a little bit. Temptation blinds us to a bunch of stuff, right? By poking and stoking those desires and just fanning them into a flame. So all you can see is the desire. Temptation hides the past from us. We forget in the moment what indulgence cost us in the past. Temptation, by stoking and that desire, also hides the future from us. It hides the bad that will come with the indulgence. And it hides from us the future good that would come if we said no, if we resisted. It hides the future from us in this way too. It hides the rewards that await us in heaven if we're Jesus followers. It hides that. Like, we're not thinking about the future at all, and we're not thinking about the past at all. All we're thinking about is right, the present and this desire and this opportunity that we have, right? The pressure and the opportunity are there, and right, and we're just panting, drooling, whatever. Temptation also blinds us to our ability to survive without the created thing. It turns that craved thing into a necessity or a right. Temptation is truly tempting when it manages to blind us to everything except for the desire. So we said we're dragged away, right? That's what James said. We're dragged away, but to where? You ever think about that? Like, where are we dragged to? I think we're dragged away to Satan's preferred future. You and I have a preferred future, right? A vision for our lives. Satan has a vision for your life, for my life. He has a preferred future for us. And James continues and helps us see, like, what happens. What is that preferred future? This is verse 15. He says, after the desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. James uses a metaphor here for this desire. He's like, it's like getting pregnant. The desire, when it's like getting pregnant, and then when the baby comes out, when it's developed, the desire and the temptation has been poked and stoked, and it develops, what comes out is sin. Sin. Satan's preferred future for you and for me is sin, and not just a sin, a life of sin. Why? James continues. And when sin is fully grown, it gives birth to death. Again, continuing the metaphor, like, so the desire gets poked and stoked, and when it gets developed and tempted and pushed and just right, it gives birth, right, what results is sin. And sin, when that happens over and over again, when that's fully developed, the sin habit, the sin pattern, the sin style, lifestyle, what you get from that is death. Death. Thomas Lee wrote, whenever the person repeatedly approves the same sin, the result is death. This is death in all of its terror, a total disintegration of the personality, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It leads to a separation from God lasting for eternity, and it all begins when an individual yields his will to evil. And no one can blame God for this. I do it to myself. There's three ways in which this really is death. This giving in, this indulging to this desire to the point where it becomes a sin that we do over and over again. Three ways, at least, that it's death. First is disintegration. That was in that quote I just read to you from Thomas Lee. Disintegration, right? That's what happens. Our bodies, when we die, it breaks down in a very real way. When you and I give in to sin over and over again, we're still physically alive, but we're breaking down. We are disintegrated, right? We're no longer integrated. There's a death of wholeness, a death of being one integrated person where, right, what I say, what I do, what I value, all line up. They're integrated, that we lose our integrity. not so much like I don't keep my word, but integrity, like think like a starship or whatever, and it's going through the void and it gets shot and they have a loss of hull integrity. It's not going to hold together anymore. It's going to come apart. And that's what sin does. It leads to death. It leads to this breaking apart of the individual, a death of wholeness. There was a second version of death, an aspect of death Thomas Lee wrote in that little bit I just read to you. He talked about separation. He said it leads to separation from God. It's a death of the relationship, a death of closeness to God. And even for those of us who are going to heaven, and that's a guaranteed thing, we still get, through sin, we still get separated from feeling close to God, from being able to just really enjoy His presence and His love. There's a death in the relationship. And then the third is there's slavery. This is another aspect of the death. John 8:34, you can look that up, talks about that. But in what we give ourselves to, we eventually end up being controlled by. And that's a death of the freedom to choose. You and I were created in the image of God, and one of the aspects of that is we can choose. And one of the goals that Satan has for us is for us to get us so hooked, so addicted, so in the habit of that we seemingly can't be free to choose. We can't seem to have the ability to say no anymore. So death, in all of its terror, as he wrote there in the thing, right? Disintegration and separation and slavery. Now, unless you're really warped, that sounds awful. Right? I have never met somebody who's like, that's my preferred future, Pastor Andy. That's my vision for my life. I want to be a person who's like not integrated. I want to be a person who's like just basically falling apart. And I want to be separated from God. And actually I'd like to be separated from my family and from my close friends. I'd like to have bad habits that interfere with my ability to be a good employee, a good husband or wife or child or friend or right? No, nobody says that. Why? Because nobody wants that. So if that sounds that awful, why are we not protesting, right? Why are there not demonstrations in the street? Why isn't there a revolution going on? Reflecting on these verses, this is what I wrote in my journal one day. You know, it's an interesting thing. In American culture, we hate to think that anything has control over us. We love the illusion of being in control. Yet in this area, we're indifferent. Our evil desires exert mastery over us and drag us off to Satan's preferred future, and we become slaves. But we're so blinded to this that we resist the one who pointed out this reality to us. That would be Jesus. We see His rulership and His rules not as the way to life, but as restriction and loss of freedom. We have bought the lie. Yeah, I think that's why we're not protesting and screaming loudly. Right? We've bought the lie. So, yeah, if everything I've said is true, then here's another fact. You and I are probably in more danger than we think, right? You are probably in more danger than you think. By that I mean like the danger is nearer than maybe you think, like it's closer to you than you realize, and it's greater. Like it's more dangerous, it's more damaging. The potential for catastrophe is greater than you and I think. Well, why? Why would I say that? Why would I say you're probably in more danger than you think? Let me give you three very quick reasons. Number one, because your desires, if James is right, that it's our desires that get out of control and get us on the highway of the danger zone, are your desires with you only some of the time, most of the time, all the time? All the time, right? Your desires are always present. Therefore, you have the potential to always be in danger because those desires can and will be used against you if the right pressure and the right opportunity comes, right? Because the desires are always there. What's not always there is the pressure to indulge them or the great opportunity to indulge them. But because the desire is there, the danger is there. But secondly, this. You're probably in more danger than you think because you live in a culture where consumption and indulgence is glorified. Like it's praised in our culture. Like, don't withhold anything. Don't deny yourself anything. Don't say no to anything that your heart desires, right? You live in a culture. I live in a culture where giving in is, oh my goodness, it's like a virtue. It's glorified, it's celebrated, it's encouraged. And then lastly, you and I also live in a culture where Jesus' way of submitting to him and deferring certain things until later, right? All of that is slandered and treated as if like that is the way to loss and deprivation and things like that. And you can't live that way. And right, our culture slanders the way of Jesus and glorifies the path of consumption. And there's a lot of reasons to that. I'm not going to get into that. But if everything I just said is true, then that would explain that, yeah, you and I are probably in a lot more danger than we think. Sometimes I actually say that to myself. Andy, the danger is nearer and greater than you realize right now. And I say that not to freak myself out, but to help me be extra vigilant. Because here's what you know and I know. Ignorance of the danger doesn't protect us. Right? An apathetic attitude towards the danger only increases the probability of being dragged away to Satan's preferred future. Right? If you're at Jurassic Park and you don't, you're like, well, I didn't know that, the gates are open and the power isn't on and the big electric fences around the dinosaurs. That ignorance doesn't protect you. And if you did know it but you don't care, that doesn't protect you either. It just increases the probability of you becoming lunch, right? Yeah. So let's wrap this up. If being dragged away to Satan's preferred future isn't your idea of a good time, I want to ask you to do two things this week, things that I think will help you and will help me, help you and others. So here they are, two things. Number one, I would love it if you would help me write the second half of this series. And here's how you can do that. I want to ask you to ask one or two other people to tell you what did they find helpful when fighting a temptation or breaking a sin habit? Like what helped them? Because like I said at the very beginning, every one of you has experience here. Like you could generate the content for a chat on this, a talk, a speech on this stuff. So let's leverage that. Talk to one or two other people. Say, well, what did you find helpful when you wanted to break a sin habit or you wanted to try to avoid a certain temptation? What helped you? I remember in a series a while back, I talked about having an anger problem, and I said to you this. I think it all began to change for me when I started doing that anger journal, and I had to write out every time after my anger. You're looking for those kinds of things. What helped? When did it begin to change for that person? When they begin to get some victory? And then that's the first half of it. Then after you've asked that person or a couple people, send to me what you find out, right? Write it out, send me an email, get it to me, because here's the thing, you have access to extremely insightful information that could help all of us. And I want to grab it, collate it, put it together, maybe synthesize it, and then share that in the second half of our series. Obviously, I won't be sharing any names, or I don't want to know your sin details. I want to know what helps. So that could help you, and it would help me, help you, and everyone else, I hope. The second thing I want to ask you to do is this. This week, just try to observe your temptations. Like when you get tempted, try to almost stand back, right? Take a step back and try to notice, what is it that you want that temptation's trying to get you to go after? What desire, I've used this phrase, what desire is being poked and stoked, right? You know, it's like being pressed on and then fanned into a flame. What is it that you want? What is it that the temptation is going after? What desire is underneath that? And just kind of observe that. Maybe you'd benefit from making a list. At this point, I'm not asking you to send that to me or whatever, but just become an observer, if you would, for this week of your own temptations. Friends, looking forward to spending the next few weeks with you as we work on this topic together. I pray that it'll be useful to me and useful to you.